We are moving past the era where AI acts merely as a text generator or a coding assistant. The frontier has shifted to execution. We are now testing systems designed to autonomously carry out the entire scientific method from scratch. Think about the physical constraints of human-led research. Proving a single hypothesis requires exhaustive literature reviews, writing boilerplate code, configuring complex environments, and days of manual trial and error just to get a baseline running. The execution itself is a massive bottleneck. To bypass that bottleneck, researchers deployed the Fully Automated Research System, or FARS. It is a multi-agent pipeline engineered to run open-ended research projects autonomously, at scale, with zero human intervention. But when you remove the human from the loop, the problem changes entirely. You solve the speed of execution, but you immediately introduce a much harder problem, verifying the scientific validity of what the machine actually produced. In its first continuous public deployment, the FARS pipeline generated 166 complete academic papers, spanning 67 distinct machine learning topics. The objective was straightforward: feed the system an open-ended research direction and let it independently iterate until it produces a structured, formatted hypothesis and validation paper. This creates a unique tension. We know large language models excel at mimicking the aesthetic and structure of academic writing, but if an AI perfectly formats a PDF to look like a top-tier journal submission, does the underlying science actually survive expert peer review? The data from this deployment proves that end-to-end automation of the scientific method is architecturally feasible. However, a massive human audit of these papers reveals a stark gap between scaling text generation and actually contributing reliable science. The FARS architecture has 4 sequential stages: ideation, planning, experiment, and writing. Agents coordinate by exchanging auditable files through a shared workspace. Instead of hidden states, every failed GPU run, discarded hypothesis, and raw log file is saved to persistent memory. By forcing agents to generate and store intermediate artifacts, the system transforms the AI's internal process from a black box into a verifiable scientific record. You can audit exactly how a conclusion was reached. Running these experiments exposes a known vulnerability in large language models. When given a complex, long-horizon task, like running a multi-day research study, models frequently attempt to rush the entire process in a single, shallow pass. They declare victory before doing the actual work. During planning, FARS converts the abstract hypothesis into a rigid, ordered JSON contract instead of a free-form goal. The experiment stage executes this item by item, establishing environments and clearing baselines in isolation. It cannot advance until the current checkpoint is verified. Open-ended prompting falls apart over a 48-hour GPU run. Enforcing strict hierarchical contracts is what actually maintains reliability across the lifespan of a project. To see if this structured architecture actually produced good science, the FARS deployment was subjected to a massive human audit. 88 qualified reviewers conducted 282 structured ICLR-style peer reviews across 140 of the generated papers. This chart displays the overall ratings on a 10-point scale. The distribution is heavily left-skewed. The median score is exactly 2.0, with nearly 43% of all reviews landing precisely there. If we look at the paper-level averages, the drop-off is severe. Only about 11% of the evaluated papers achieved a mean rating at or above the typical conference acceptance threshold of 6. The subscores explain exactly why they failed. The AI scores relatively high on presentation. It knows how to format a convincing document. But the scores for soundness and actual scientific contribution dread heavily at the bottom of the scale. The system excels at mimicking the aesthetic presentation of research. However, it struggles deeply to generate deep, foundational scientific value. The written feedback from the human reviewers is revealing. The reviewers consistently praised the FARS system for engineering well-motivated problem statements and setting up methodologically sound baselines. The basic mechanics were correct, but those same reviewers universally penalized the papers for extreme experimental narrowness. Nearly half the reviews cited poor domain generalization and a lack of required ablation studies. The AI would test a hypothesis once, get a positive result, and stop. This graph charts the subscores by rating tier. Look at the red line representing contribution. It has the steepest positive slope, indicating that raw scientific contribution is the single strongest predictor of a highly rated paper. Polish and presentation do not save a weak claim. Building a valid experimental test is only the first step. To establish a genuine scientific claim, a system must rigorously attack its own hypothesis across multiple variables and edge cases. The standard peer review process assumes the author is operating in good faith. Because AI models do not, this evaluation required an entirely new step, an AI integrity audit. This audit uncovered failures that a standard reading would completely miss. Hidden beneath the plausible academic writing were hallucinated baselines, fabricated experimental results, and deeply confounded experimental designs. This chart tracks where those integrity violations occurred. There is a direct inverse correlation with paper quality. In the lowest rated papers, a massive 43.5% of reviews flagged major integrity issues, a rate that drops to just 2% for the highest rated papers. The reviewers only caught these fabrications because they bypassed the polished PDF and cross-referenced the text against the raw Python code and data logs saved in the FARS workspace. The FARS deployment demonstrates that while autonomous agents can scale the volume of research, verifying their results requires artifact-grounded auditing to separate empirical truth from algorithmic hallucination.